I mean, first of all, in terms of the sort of university application process, there's so many things we could discuss. If at the end of this presentation or throughout you've got questions, please do. But if you want to go in any further depth at any point, then obviously please do contact me separately. I'm very happy to have sort of individual discussions, as I've done with many of you over the sort of past couple of weeks. So here we go. Just as a recap in terms of my role as a director of studies, I sort of oversee the sixth form with the students and obviously therefore university applications with support from the deputy head of sixth forms. And then obviously I sort of line manage the faculties with the support of the leader faculties, James, and have a sort of overall sort of view of the school. So this gives you some kind of understanding of where I'm coming from when I can present all of this information today. So the first thing in terms of the agenda, we're going to be obviously looking at how you decide a degree program, looking at universities, what is UCAS, looking at personal statements, references, predicted grades, important dates, and then thinking about how Ashbourne in particular can help with this process. So first of all, in terms of sort of deciding a degree, well, first of all, obviously, you know, what particular sort of career pathway are you looking to go down? That obviously is the immediate starting point. And also then to consider there's just a vast range of different university degree courses out there. I've put a link there to sort of the UCAS search function, which I will send the slides afterwards, which you can access. And this, you can find any university course from there. Very useful tool to look at when you're looking through sort of degree courses. You've got to very much think about what your strengths are and your interests. You're going to be doing this degree for at least 3 years. You've got to make sure you're motivated to do it over that period of time. And if, let's say, you're in a position where you're stuck, you don't know what to do, you've got no idea what direction you should go in for your university degree, then there are sort of personality test tools, university sort of course finders based on your A-level subject choices, and also, you know, your grades that you've got throughout your educational time. So there's ways in which there are tools out there that can help you if you're not sure which particular path to go down. Obviously, you can get advice from sort of subject teachers, specialists, and we're going to sort of go through some key points here about sort of your sort of A-level subject recap, which we went through yesterday, because obviously the subjects you choose for A-levels obviously have a big sort of determinant factor on what degree programs you can apply for. So let's just have a quick look at that, just very briefly. So we went through the idea of discussing you should do 4 subjects at the beginning, maybe, although courses are based on 3. Consider your capabilities within each individual sort of subject and keep your options open. How maybe, for example, taking mathematics would keep lots of finance degrees open, whereas something like chemistry would keep sort of medical related degrees open. So, you know, keeping your option open is another key point. Consider your enjoyment of the subject areas, the specific requirements for degree programs, and some subjects are rated higher than others. We talked about the idea of facilitating subjects and how many of the top universities will prefer some subjects over others. Taking your own native language, if that's a possibility, in year 12, which is the first year of A-levels, and considering how your subjects complement each other. How does something like English complement classical civilization? And how does art history underpin the research that you need to carry out in the art subjects, or maths? Obviously, how that affects chemistry, physics, psychology, biology, etc. Not taking more than 2 A-level art subjects because the workload's going to be too much, and taking at least 1 facilitating subject for the top universities in the UK. So these were the kind of recap of points that we went over yesterday's meeting, and I just think it's some good thoughts as you're sort of going through the degree choice kind of thinking. So then obviously you're moving on to like, what university are you going to apply to and why? So a number of different things to consider here. We'll talk about Russell Group universities. We'll look at the university rankings, subject-specific rankings, which is slightly different, visiting the actual university, which is obviously real challenging at the moment, Ashbourne's University Day, which we do in the first year, and then other key factors in regards to this. So Russell Group universities are 24 UK universities that sort of share a focus on research and reputation for sort of academic achievement. There are other groups out there like Alliance and some others, but I would say the Russell Group is probably the most well-known. And although many of the top 25 universities in the UK are Russell Group universities, we should not forget universities such as St Andrews, Lancaster, Loughborough, etc., and UAL for arts, obviously are key destinations and top ranking universities in themselves. So Russell Group is a good place to start, but it's not the only one. So that Russell Group universities, here are the 24 Russell Group universities. And it gives you an idea about, which universities are within that group and which ones are not. So in terms of looking at universities for university rankings, this comes from the Complete University Guide and looks at the top 15 ranked universities. And you can see from that list, 11 of the 15 are Russell Group universities. One or two others are not. But again, it just shows you that the vast majority are. Then obviously looking at subject-specific rankings. So though it doesn't actually show that within this slide, this looks at medicine. So looking at where the universities rank in relation to medical degree pathways. So if you look along the slide, you'll see Kiel down there, overall ranked as 52nd, but for medicine, they're ranked as number 9. So it is very important that you use the sort of league. If you're going to look at league rankings as an important determinant, then make sure you're aware about the subject-specific rankings as well as the university rankings. It's just something good to know. And then obviously think about the world rankings. What's good to note for university education in the UK, the variety of different world ranking sort of tools that are out there. The UK normally has sort of 9 or 10 universities in the top 50 ranked universities in the world. And again, it's an interesting thing to note, but gives you good confidence about how people perceive UK universities in terms of your future job aspirations. So also another thing to consider is visit the university if you can. Best in person, but at the moment that's obviously a real challenge. We're currently compiling a list of virtual open days, because universities are doing that, and we will send that list out very shortly. If you would like to have access of that, please do contact me separately. Be happy to send it out. We must remember that whilst you have to decide your choices before the UCAS deadlines, which is normally obviously the 15th of January for all courses and the 15th of October for Oxbridge and medical applications. Whilst that is true, it is important to know that you won't have to make a final decision about those 5 universities that you applied to, which hopefully you'll get offers, until May. And what that means is you've got quite a lot of time to kind of look at those different universities and revisit them as necessary. And we definitely recommend that you do. Also look out for subject-specific open days, and because they also can be very helpful to go into the nitty-gritty about each individual course. And Ashbourne obviously can help with this too. And the way we help is in February of the first year availables, we have a Ashbourne University Day. So we invite universities such as Imperial, UCL, LSE, all to come into the school and then to meet with our students, to get them to ask questions and to learn more about these programs. And I think that's a really good advantage of coming into Ashbourne due to that great relationship that's set up through those kind of meetings. Obviously, Ashbourne then offers a university seminar to the kids at that time, and it's a great opportunity for them to engage and consider what's going to happen going forward with their application. So other key factors to consider, I would say, is definitely the location. Don't go somewhere unless you've visited or at least got a very, very good understanding of what it's going to be like. Look at the course content. Economics in one university is vastly different to economics in another. Let me get some water, sorry. So it's very different from one university to the next. And then also think about grade requirements. You must be, optimistic and ambitious, but also make sure that it's realistic. But the good thing with the university application in the UK, you can apply to 5 different universities, and therefore, at least with 1 or 2 of the universities, be ambitious. Try and push the boat out to ensure that you're giving yourself the best chance to go to somewhere prestigious. But obviously, make sure the school backs up your application with predicted grades that can match those kind of lofty ambitions. So what is UCAS? So UCAS is an independent charity, sort of provides information, advice and admission services and oversees the entire university application process in the UK. It administers over 3 million applications each year, which obviously is quite significant from over 700,000 students. Your responsibilities as a student need to apply up to 5 choices. Interestingly, you can apply to 2 universities. 2 courses within the same university. That is possible, although as we go on to speak about later, I don't actually advise that you do that. But we will make that clearer later in this discussion. You obviously need to write your personal statement, and which is a kind of an essay about yourself and your interests and about why you're suitable for the program. Complete all sections of the form and send the application. Keep good relations and communication with your subject-specific UCAS advisor, and keep up to date with all of the offer information that's coming through from UCAS, and supply additional information where required. Eventually, obviously, you have to determine your final choices. So let's say you were given 5 university offers. You then need to choose what is called a firm offer and an insurance. So your firm offer would be, let's say they said you need to get 3 A's for your A levels. You get the 3 A's, you would then go to your firm offer. If, let's say, you didn't meet that, the university would then get you to go to your insurance offer if your insurance met your grade entry requirements. So that's a basic kind of structure with sort of firm and insurance. There's other things like clearing and UCAS extra, etc., which is not covered within this presentation, but you're more than happy to ask questions about it if you see fit. A personal statement. So one of the key aspects of a university application. We're going to look at what is it, the 2 important questions that you should consider, evidencing your interest for the subject areas, important tips, and what not to do. All right, so first of all, what is it? It is an advertisement, okay? It's an opportunity for you to put yourself out there and say, choose me, okay? It obviously supports your application to study to university, and it's an opportunity to differentiate yourself from other students. Why should the university choose your application over others? You can only write one. You're not writing individual statements for each university. You're writing one personal statement, which is going to be given to all of the universities. And it's up to 4,000 characters, and that's about 47 lines. So on the one hand, you might struggle at the beginning to think, what am I going to write? On the other hand, you get to a position where you're in a situation where you've got too much information. The key thing with all this is to make sure everything that you put in your statement is relevant, do not waffle, and make sure every point is backed up. So this is a kind of overview of what the personal statement actually is. So 2 important questions, though, when you go about the statement. And I think this is a key focus to keep in mind. One, why do you want to study the course? What is your interest in it? And 2, what makes you a suitable candidate? And if you can think back to these 2 questions with all the different ideas you have for your statement, that is a very, very important starting place when you're considering how to write it. Evidencing your interest, another key point. You've got to demonstrate your interest beyond A-level learning. This is a chance for you to talk passionately about your interest towards the subject areas. As the University of Oxford say here, we want students that are really committed to engage by the subject they're applying, and in many cases that will mean they need to demonstrate they read much wider than would be the case with their A-level. So take the opportunity to go beyond the specification. Don't just focus on your A-level learning. Make yourself stand out. So evidencing your interest, well, how can you do it? You can do it through online courses, work experience. At the moment, interestingly, there are virtual work experience opportunities out there, which again, we're happy to give you more information about if you like. Films, documentaries, books, news articles, online courses. There's a wide variety of different ways you can evidence your interest. And especially during this time, the months of June, July, and August is a fabulous opportunity for you really starting to think about your degree pathways and what is it that you're going to do over the summer that you can write within your personal statement as a good example of what you've done to differentiate yourself from other students. So in terms of Ashbourne at the moment, we're actually developing a super curricular library, which looks at all those different ways you can evidence your interest. At the moment, we have over 600 entries. They're specific to each degree program. And if you want more information about this, please do request. For the students that have been using it so far, it's been very helpful. And I think it's something that we sort of build up over a period of time. And if you want to get access to that, please do let me know. So in terms of evidencing your interest, it is, let's say, for example, you've got some work experience at some point working for HSBC. You said, I did a 2-week placement working for HSBC, shadowing, an accountant or whatever it was. That's fine. But why did you do it? What did you get from it? And how has it changed you? And what has it led you on to? Many of your different sort of interests on the things that you do to prove your interest in the subject can fit very conveniently together. But you've got to kind of create a narrative within your UCAS statement, which shows that not only did you do things, they sort of led on to doing something else in the future, or how it impacted you. Because doing that will convince the universities that you are a genuine candidate that actually is ideally suited for their universities. As LSC points out at the bottom, remember, we are interested not in just a list of what you've done, but evidence you've reflected on the academic idea. And I think that's an important point when you're considering evidencing your interest. Another point, this came up from the University of Oxford, is more thinking about focusing on one sort of degree pathway. What you've got to be careful about is, let's imagine you're applying for law and you're also applying for history, let's say, and you're applying to a competitive university like Oxford or LSE, etc., etc. Now, whilst it's completely understandable that you might apply for a law or history degree, you've got to understand the competition. And if you are an admissions tutor at university and you're reading a statement by someone that's clearly focusing in on a law degree, or clearly focusing on the history degree, or splitting it between history and law, it's going to make a significant difference in how you view that candidate. It's not to say you can't do it, but for those more competitive degree programs, I would 100% advise against doing it. And I think this is backed up by what Fiona said here from the University of Oxford. I think another thing when you're applying to the top universities is considering that they care more about the academic than they're going to care about your sort of extracurricular activities. So no, absolutely, it's wonderful that people maybe play for their football team, or they're a netball captain, or whatever they might do, or they play the piano. But you have to ask yourself, what relevance do those things have to your chosen degree pathway? Now, it may well tell the university something about your suitability to do well at university. That's good. Or your suitability to fitting well with the actual year group. That's good. But that must always be secondary to your major point of, how does your statement focus in on what makes you suitable for that chosen degree pathway? That's got to be your #1 focus. So, the other thing to be careful about here is, obviously, if you're going to try and use technical terms and academic language, that obviously is a definite plus point, but do not overcomplicate things. I've read many a personal statement where it's quite clear that the reader, the person that's constructed the statement, has tried to use, very challenging sort of vocabulary, and they then got themselves in a bit of a pickle where the reader no longer has a clue what the student is trying to articulate. So clarity is key. Keep it simple, over complicating things. And the same really here applies to sort of A-level responses. The A-level examiners want to give you the marks, but don't confuse them. Keep it simple. I think the same is true for your university statements.
Lee, I've got a couple of questions here. So I have a question here from Ali. He says, will we get UCAS student logins, or do we sign up for ourselves?
You sign up for yourselves. We will work with that with the students. So basically each year, UCAS normally opens the portal in about sort of May the 1st of year 12. So you can start adding your details from May the 1st onwards. It's generally around that date. But yeah, and the school obviously will help you with that.
Okay, thanks, Ali. A question here from Umo. Does Ashbourne offer help on work placements over the summer? Absolutely.
And what our initial thing to do is to find what opportunities are out there. And that's what was linked back to the kind of the super curricular library that we're building. It is very important that students do take initiative, especially for the top ranking universities, and are part of that process rather than being put on their plate. So we do research, we find out opportunities. We're obviously very happy to help with checking CVs and writing, helping with covering letters, or even preparing for interviews if necessary. So we most definitely can help support in that regard.
Okay, thanks, Emo. Let us know if you've got any further questions on that. Also, another question here from friends of Q House School. For art students looking at undertaking a foundation year first, how does this work, and do they apply twice through UCAS in successive years?
Yes, I mean, what I would say with the art students, what we're going to do is on Friday the 5th, I believe, of June, there's a subject-specific art event that we're holding, which we're going to go in far more depth about art application, which I'm happy to do in that point. With foundation application is slightly different for art, and I think that would be something we better be visited at that time rather than going into great depth at this discussion.
Okay, yeah, and we can be in contact with the details about those subject-specific seminars next week. So yeah, thanks very much for that. Do keep the questions coming in. Thank you, Lee.
Just to follow up on that last point as well, if, as many people have done, if you want to book individual appointments with me to go through more specific things in great depth, please do that. I'm very happy to have sort of one-on-one discussions, which I believe, or hopefully, people found very useful. So I think within the personal statement, you've also got to consider this, right? These admissions tutors are reading a lot of statements. So make your statement memorable, personalize it. Don't be generic, stand out from the crowd. Really consider the position of the person that's reading it. Okay, so it's really important that you do that. Otherwise, it would just be another statement they've read that's given some kind of generic response, which is just going to go onto the top of a pile somewhere. So just make sure you think, what can I do to really catch the reader's attention? So there's another important point to consider. So here's things that you should not do. So my father has a computing company, and I spent a month working there over the summer. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think there's any necessity to disclose that as you're communicating within your statement. Universities, a number of admissions tutors, will not look particularly fondly on those university work experience placements that have only been gained as a result of sort of relationships within families or friends. Okay, so you've got to make sure you're aware of that, because it could potentially be a concern within the statement. The second is, don't come up with, ever since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to be a pilot. I mean, come on, stay away from that, right? Talk about the evolution of how you've wanted to become a pilot, but don't use phrases of ever since I was a little boy or ever since I was a little girl, whatever. Stay away from that. I'm currently studying English, history, maths, and chemistry at A-level. Give me a break. They know it already. Stay away from that. If you start writing sentences like this, you know you're struggling to fill up the space, and you need to think more back to how are you going to evidence your interest. I've always wanted to go to LSE. Now, unless you're only applying to LSE, don't do this, because what will the other 4 universities think about your application? Put books in your statement that you haven't read. That's a problem, especially if you're interviewed. Be very careful about this. If you're interviewed, and if you're being interviewed, make sure you know your personal statement back to front, and that you can go into greater depth if people are asking you specific questions within the statement. Refrain from talking about basic A-level content, other than and focus on things that you've learned independently. I mean, these are university admissions tutors and lecturers. They're going to know, about the basics. You do not need to retell them. Okay, to focus on something interesting and new that you've learned, and avoid famous quotes. I mean, this is a bit of a joke here, but yeah, stay away from famous quotes. If you're going to quote, which people do, and a lot of people say as a general rule, stay completely away from quotes, which as a general rule, I would say is a good piece of advice. You can use quotes, but they need to be thought through very carefully. And you need to think of very specific quotes that are not going to be well used, and something that would be an interesting sort of question that's posed or something like that. But be very careful about quotes, and obviously do not plagiarize or copy. They'll find out, and you'll have a big problem. So,
just a few more questions here, Lee. Sorry. A question from John. He said, for a competitive subject like medicine, is biological sciences a reasonable backup choice for medical schools out of 5 choices? And is it advisable to apply to the same university for both subjects?
It's an interesting point. I think that with medical degree pathways, because you can only choose 4, there's a kind of understanding that the UCAS statement is going to obviously focus in on medicine. And the point you've raised about applying to the university for medicine, and I think you said biomedical science, I think is actually quite a sensible decision, because the UCAS, the admissions tutors in there will completely understand why your biomedical personal statement doesn't tailor for that particular degree program specifically. So I think that's quite a sensible kind of strategy.
Okay, thanks, John. Let us know if you've got any further questions on that. And a question here, Lee, from John and Kath. They say, if the student is applying for a drama course whereby their physical portfolio is important, can they put a link in their personal statement that takes them to a YouTube video that highlights their work?
I believe the answer to that is no. I'm going to double check that, but as far as I'm aware, the UCAS statement is not there for that purpose. What you've got to be careful about is that especially with things like drama and art, the portfolio side of things is going to be an important part of the application. They will probably ask you about that separately. And that's something, again, we will go into more depth about that when we have our drama subject specific day. I'm not sure exactly when that is, Chris, next week, but that's something that you might want to come along to. And Daniel, who's running that, I'll speak to him and he can give some more specific information about drama applications at that event if you'd like to come along to it.
Yeah, certainly. We'll be able to follow up with you, John and Kath, about that event. And I have another question here from Catherine Lee. She says, my son has dual nationality, French and British.
Yeah.
Should he register as a British student or British and French? One of his 4 A-levels is French.
Then apply with a British passport. I think what you've got to consider here is, we talked about native languages yesterday. Let's imagine you're applying with a French passport. Some universities will just think, well, then the French is a given, and therefore it's not particularly impressive that he's doing it. If he's applying with a British passport, they may well not pick it up. And you know, I don't know what his school background is and which schools he went to, but you know, if you can and if it's possible, then I would definitely apply with a British passport.
Okay, thanks very much, Catherine. Any more questions, please let us know.
Great, thanks a lot, Chris. So reference and predicted grades. So the Ashbourne, anyway, the reference is written by a subject specialist. And this is obviously considering very carefully about the individual's suitability for the chosen degree pathway. And we obviously have to consider very carefully how the reference and sort of dovetails with the personal statement. And this can be particularly helpful for students to consider. Is, let's imagine you've got so many things to talk about within your statement that you can't fit everything in. Then give it to your subject specialist. I'm sure they'd really appreciate it. I mean, often, you know, when you're writing a reference, if you've got to write lots of references, it could be it could be hard work, and therefore being reminded about some of the things that you've got up to as an individual is an excellent thing to do. And I'm sure your UCAS advisor would be very appreciative of being pointed in the right direction. Of course, they need to verify the information, but it's a very good thing and something I definitely would recommend. This obviously, the reference is used as a very, very important part of the university application process. Many universities in the UK do not do interviews, so they're just looking at predicted grades, they're looking at the reference and the personal statement, and maybe the past performance of the student, let's say for GCSE. So the reference does compose an important part of that process. Predicted grades. So Ashbourne, the subject specialist who's overseeing the university application, will consult with the subject teachers with regards to predicted grades. At Ashbourne, as we discussed yesterday, many of our subjects do an AS at the end of year 12, or that's an external qualification, or they do an internally assessed AS qualification. And we will use that usually as the kind of firm basis of considering predicted grades. Then let's imagine you, at the end of year 1, you got, let's say, BCC, for example, as your end of year assessments. You want to apply for a AAA program. We may want to say to you, well, we're not in the position yet to predict your grades. So therefore, you've got a mock, because we do mocks every half term. You've got a mock at the end of October, half term 1 mock. This offers another opportunity for you to prove yourself. And if you do really well in that, maybe we can alter your predictions. So at Ashbourne, there is an understanding here. It's not set in stone purely based on the AS grades. There are other opportunities to prove yourself. We do completely understand students can improve significantly from year 12 to year 13. Sometimes it can be a bit of a wake-up call after the AS results, and therefore we do offer that flexibility. However, we must always remember that as a general rule, it would be good to send the university application sooner rather than later. Therefore, you know, ideally you do well in your AS qualifications. It makes it much easier for us to predict your grades earlier. So predicted grades should be aspirational but achievable. Stretching predicted grades is a motivational tool for students, but unattainable predicted grades are not. It should be determined by professional judgment. It should be data driven, and it is noted that it's the final point of the application. Once you've submitted the application, you can't alter predicted grades. That's it. It's done. So you have to understand that when we're doing this, we do want to be positive as best we can, but we've got to make sure they are achievable grades and not unattainable. 1 second, sorry, gone the wrong way there. Okay, so in terms of what they should not be affected by external pressures, whether that is the university entry requirements or the feedback from parents and students. These are the results that we think would be the most likely outcomes at the end of the 2-year program, and they should not be influenced by the 2 factors that are on the screen. So important dates that you should consider. The first is obviously the end of year 12 at Ashbourne. May and June is when the AS examinations take place, and normally they'll take place in May. And then in year 13, obviously the results of year 12, except for this year, because this is an anomaly, but in the year 12 results will be released in mid-August. The 1st of October is the Conservatoire deadline for music, drama, and dance applications. 15th of October is Oxbridge Medicine dentistry application deadline. And the end of October, irrespective, obviously leave out medical and Oxbridge candidates, but for all those other students, we are expecting that your personal statement is done and dusted. Now, it may well be the position that we can't send your application yet because you haven't proved that that we're in a position to predict the grades necessary. But from a personal statement point of view, that should have been done by that point. That's the 31st of October of your 2nd year. 15th of January is the date that all of the university courses, all their applications should have been sent off by that point. There is sort of like loopholes to that after the 15th of January. But again, that sort of goes beyond this discussion. If you want more information, either about clearing, UCAS extra, etc., please maybe ask questions at the end, or I'm happy to speak to you on a one-to-one basis. In May, although it's moved to June this year, is the time that you confirm your firm and your insurance offers. And then mid-August, the results come out. And obviously, if you meet your offer, you get the offer. If you don't, you'll get your insurance. If you don't meet that, then you will go into clearing. Again, I'm happy to discuss that at another time. So how does Ashbourne help with all of this? First of all, I mean, we're absolutely with you the whole way through. And I think for those students that are either moving from year 11 to year 12 at Ashbourne, or for those that are joining us in September, that this starts now. Now, if you are in a position of, I already know I want to go into engineering or medicine, then great. Then let's use the summer productively to focus in on tasks in those areas. If you're not in that position and you're in a position of, I'm not sure what I want to do at university, I don't know which direction to go into, then let's look at personality tests. Let's look at looking through subjects and doing some research into universities to consider what is the best way to go forward. So absolutely start the process now. Our point of view, we're going to be there all the way through to advise and support you in terms of your choices for university and degree programs. We're going to help you obviously through that process gain offers, meet those offers, and then obviously prepare and be ready for university. So each student in year 12 will have a personal tutor that they meet once a week. This tutor has a number of different responsibilities, but this involves introducing the university application process, advising about degree choices, helping the students with their draft personal statement, which need to be completed, the draft, by the end of year 12, and then working with the students to make a plan over the summer. And I think if you put this in your mind, let's imagine you write a draft personal statement, and you thought about those 2 points about, why do I want to study the program and what makes me a suitable candidate? And then you start writing and think, you know what, I haven't got 4,000 characters here. I haven't got enough evidence. That's the moment that you can reflect and think, well, what could I do? So I think that doing the draft of the statement at the end of year 12 is an excellent idea because it can give you a map about what to do from a positive point of view over the summer. And then obviously the personal tutors will work with subject specialists and specialist programs like we discussed yesterday to ensure that you are supported effectively. So the specialist programs, whether that be medical, engineering, or finance, or Oxbridge, all these different things we run at the school, specialized programs for those, which is a part of what we normally do as our normal sort of commitment to the students at the school. These specialized programs and subject-specific advisors will be there obviously to help differentiate your application from others, make it stand out through supercurricular ideas and suggestions, preparing you for interviews where necessary, whether it's an art interview at the UAL or Oxbridge interviews, and preparation for assessment tests, a wide variety of assessment tests. The universities will think more about this now, especially as a result of what's happened with COVID, and we will help you prepare for those, refining your personal statements at the beginning of year 13, and obviously personalizing the reference to make sure that the personal statement and reference intertwine very well to stand out from other candidates. So obviously this is how we help. That's backed up with some of the points we raised yesterday about our performance, the reputation of the school. When we predict grades, will the universities consider those and believe that, you know what, this is coming from a school that gets great results, and therefore we feel comfortable about that particular prediction from Ashbourne. 50% of our results are A-star A, 1 in 5 got AAA or above last year. We improve student performance. Over half our students go to Russell Group universities, and about 1 in 6, sorry, go to either Imperial, Oxford, UCL, Cambridge, or LSE. That's IOUCL, which are sort of seen as around the world the top 5 sort of UK universities in general. So,
question, Haley.
Yeah.
This is from Dirk and Thea. Given the exceptional circumstances currently around the internally generated equivalent AS grades, will universities attach less significance to the currently predicted grades?
This is a very good point. I mean, what Ashbourne's done this particular year and this particular year only is we didn't actually make the decision to give students an externally assessed AS grade. We've actually done them all internally because we took the same opinion, but the universities probably wouldn't take them that seriously. So yes, I think there is a lot of skepticism about the AS, but you know, at the end of the day, they still they haven't changed the system about predicted grades. Ashbourne will give predictions based on the internally assessed grades and any other performance from now until the point that we predict. But yes, I think that the AS has somewhat been devalued as a result of the COVID.
Okay, thanks, Dirk and Thea. Just let us know if you've got any follow-up questions on that. I've got another question here from Ali Lee. He says, will our GCSE grades have a significant impact to our chances of getting into specific universities, or is it more dependent on our A-level grades?
As a general rule, I think it's more dependent on your A-level grades. However, you've got to remember maths and English, pretty much standard across the universities. They're going to expect at least a 5 in both and sometimes a 6. What you've got to be careful with specific universities, especially to follow up on the last point, they might take more of an interest in your GCSEs as a result of, you know, now over half the schools in the UK don't do AS anyway. And I would imagine the other half, like Ashbourne this year, had a big question mark about doing it. So, you know, they will be looking back at GCSE. Do look at specific entry requirements at universities and see what they've got to say before you encounter or embark upon your A-levels.
Okay, thank you, Ali. Cheers, Lee.
Okay, so that sort of summarizes the sort of university thing today. We've got some webinars coming up shortly. So from next Monday, we have subject-specific webinars starting for 15 subjects next week and some more the following weeks going forward. We have an introduction to A-level mathematics, which prepares students for further mathematics. That starts in the beginning of June. And it's a literature essay competition with a cash prize of £500, which allows students to show off their literary skills. So there's lots of different things that students can get up to. And if, let's say, you're a registered student at Ashbourne or you're looking to come here, we also are working with our registered students to think about summer programs that can either A, get them ready for the A-level program in September, or B, or B, what can they start doing to help differentiate themselves from other candidates? So you'll hear me say that phrase quite a lot, and evidencing your interest. It's very, very important when you're applying to Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, LSE, you know, what makes your application stand out? It definitely is not all about the grades for the best universities in the UK. So that is the end of the presentation today. And I hope that you found it useful. Do you have any questions at all? Please do ask away. I'll be here for the next few minutes to answer any of the queries.
Yeah, just a few questions here, Lee. So a question from Gulchin. They say, do you offer IELTS preparation for international students? And do they take this course in year 12 or year 13?
Yes, we do. We do extra support each week. So there's like a 2-hour weekly class that students go to. In terms of when they take the IELTS assessment, all you've got to remember is it should be within 2 years of the start date at university. So for those students, let's say, are in year 11 from overseas, who've maybe done an IELTS qualification, that's not going to be able to be used for university application. So you have to redo it at some point. We expect all IELTS students to have done a test, at least one test in year 12, and we can help with that.
Ornella has asked, if I'm only joining Ashbourne for year 13 and my current school's mocks have been cancelled, can I do everything with Ashbourne? And can I apply during 2020-21 for Oxford for 2022 entry?
Yes, I mean, what I'd say, Ornella, is that we after this meeting, contact Kevin and book a time to meet, and we can go through that together on a one-to-one basis and plan what you're going to do over the summer effectively.
Question here from Eleni Lee. She says, do you think there will be more students retaking year 12 given the pandemic issues this year?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that so Ashbourne normally has a 3C rule for someone jumping from year 12 to year 13. And the reason that's in place fundamentally is, let's imagine a student didn't get 3Cs, they got 3Ds, but they worked incredibly hard with a great part of the school community, attended every class, then obviously we'd allow them to continue. I think for Ashbourne, it allows us to say after 1 year, look, if you're not fitting into the school and you do not sort of meet our basic requirements and you haven't met the grade expectation, then it's a chance to say, you know what, maybe this is not the right place for you, or maybe you should repeat. What happens this year is a lot of schools wouldn't have committed to AS. So as much as we've got an idea about where the students are at academically, it's not as concrete as it would have been before. So the chances of people progressing are probably more significant. But then on the other side of things, some parents and students may well feel they haven't been supported effectively. From talking to the parents at Ashbourne, I think in general they've been very happy with the support. We moved to online learning before the lockdown, and I think we've been able to offer a pretty good provision. So possibly they could, but conversely they might not. I'm sorry to give you an indefinite answer, but yeah.
Okay, thanks, Eleni. Let us know if you have any further questions on that. John and Kath have asked here, Lee, when is the first draft personal statement due? What date?
So for Ashbourne students, we'd normally expect it by the end of this week. But ultimately what we're intending to do is the students give the first draft by this week, and then the teachers will look over those drafts over the course of June and give some specific feedback for them to look at over the summer. So there's 2 points. One is the statement and 2 is the summer plan. So each of the year 12 students have been asked to do those 2 things, and therefore we can then give feedback on both. If for whatever reason by the end of this week the statement's not completed, then just to contact Sean Pillai as the deputy head of sixth form, and we'll work out what additional support we can provide.
Question here from Will Lee. Are you able to share with us the specific subjects and activities you will offer this summer?
What does he mean in particular by that?
Will, do you mean the super curricular activities that we've compiled? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, he says yes. Yes,
we will do that.
Okay, great. Question here from Mohammed Lee. Do you recommend any summer courses for dentistry?
What I would say is, again, this sort of goes back to the point that Will just made. We've got a list of sort of super curricular suggestions. And I would recommend, again, you just ask us to send that through to you, have a look at those. I think it's very useful to sort of go through that and get some ideas about what you could do over the summer. And if for whatever reason you're still looking for new ideas, please come back to us and we'd be happy to help.
Great, thanks, Mohammed. Question here from Oscar. How many students do you send to Cambridge and Oxford each year?
It does vary from one year to another. On average, it's about sort of 5 or 6 students a year. But it does depend from one cohort to the next. And as you quite rightly know, you do get some fabulous students that come through. And obviously our job is to make sure they get prepared properly, but that is around about that number.
Okay, great. Another question here from Catherine Lee. She says, following on from my last question about applying as a British student instead of French and British, all my schooling was in the French system till year 9. Should I still apply as a British student?
I would still do it. I think that you've got, if you have a choice, unless there's other factors that you're considering, I think that I would go with the UK application.
A follow-up here from John and Kathleen. They say, just to be clear, we don't receive a report for this past term. We just receive grades in mid-August.
Well, yeah, so basically the year 12 students this year, we're about to send out some correspondence about this. Because we're given internally assessed grades, and it's just for year 12 students, we are in a position to release the results earlier. And the speculation here is that will be in about the 8th of June. So the idea for AS only, this is not for A-level results or GCSE, for AS only results, we will look to give them out at the beginning of June, which will allow parents, students in the school to plan effectively over the summer to make sure those students that maybe didn't get the results they wanted to, we can figure out why that was and what we can do to help them. We've seen this as an opportunity, and we've taken advantage of it to get into that position.
Okay, thanks, John and Kath. And just everyone, if you do have any follow-up questions or want to ask something further, please just do put it in the chat, and I will read it out. Mohammed's asked, can you please share the slides? Yes, we can. We will share the slides with any interested people. Just contact us. I will put the admissions email address again in the chat. Just need to contact us on there, and we'll be very happy to send it to you. Samara has asked, Lee, how different is A-level mathematics to further mathematics?
Well, it's a jump. I mean, our feeling is this, is let's say you are looking to do further mathematics, and some schools run it in parallel. Now, Mike, who's the principal of the school, just doesn't believe in that. He feels that A-level is absolutely the sort of foundation for further mathematics. And the way further mathematics works, which sort of carries on with pure and core maths, which is what we focus on, and an option between mechanics or statistics, it is basically a very firm understanding. It is challenging. If you are maybe sort of like an 8 or 9 GCSE student, I'd potentially look at it. But as a sort of 7, 6, or 5, you need to think a lot. You need to think a lot about whether you can do further maths. And I think that the course that Sean's going to run is an excellent kind of way in to consider whether you want to go down that path. You know, maths A-level has jumped significantly in terms of the challenge. So further maths has gone the same way too. So just something worth considering.
Okay, thanks, Amara. We'd be happy to contact you about the maths course that's taking place in June. Got a question here from Zong. Lee, I'm planning to study business and finance in university. What subjects should I choose?
Maths. That's the most important thing. You know, when you're looking at any financial related degree, interesting enough, even economics at LSE, maths first, economics maybe. You know, so I think, but what I would say is that there is a kind of sort of university thing, and there's a general point of view. If you're applying for that subject matter, maths is a definite. Economics, I would strongly recommend you do. I think it's a brilliant subject to take. Gives you a very broad kind of perspective about the sort of education and sort of economics in general. And I think that those two would be definites. And if you're strong at maths, especially going down the finance sector, then further maths. They would be the three. And then beyond that, it's sort of that then it would depend on you as an individual. And I'd like to talk to you on a one-to-one basis. I can find more about you before I can suggest other alternatives.
Okay, thanks, John. And Gulchin has asked, Lee, do universities like Imperial and LSE accept retake grades?
Well, only in extenuating circumstances, as a general rule. I think that if you're just, you know, in fact, even on LSE's website, I believe it will say something like no, right? So there must have been really significant issues. Now, what happens this year with COVID? I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? But as a general rule, I think they're against it, and you'd have to prove to them that you've been through quite traumatic circumstances, which led to you not getting the grades. What you've got to consider is they might say, well, if you went through such traumatic circumstances, then why didn't you apply for special consideration with exam boards and get adjusted that way? And that's a difficult question to answer. So, you know, normally the answer is no.
Okay, thanks, Kulchin. And a question here from Tuan Lee. Is it necessary to study history of art for the architecture course at university?
No, it's not. I think it's an excellent subject choice. And when Ashbourne, I always, you know, some schools out there only do 3 subjects from the beginning because they sort of block their subjects together. The nice thing about Ashbourne, although it is a real challenge to timetable, is up until July the 1st, we allow any subject combinations. So to clarify, for a September 2020 start, up until the 1st of July, you can choose any combination of 4 subjects and we'll somehow make it timetable. For an architecture application, I think maths, fine art, and then 2 complementaries, physics and art history, is a great kind of combination of 4 subjects, which I would strongly recommend, because the art history very much underpins your research within fine art. So it very much fits together in a very good way.
Okay, thanks, Tuan. And let us know if you've got any further questions. And anyone else who's got a question, please do use the chat.
Well, Chris, first of all, thanks very much for your help. And thanks for everyone for coming along to attend. I hope you found the presentation useful, and keep safe. And if you've got any questions at any point, we're absolutely here to help. Thank you very much for your time.